This is a brief tutorial on how to contribute to VMware open source projects on GitHub. I'm going to assume that you already have a GitHub account and have already set up your SSH keys for that account. You'll need to make sure that you have your own fork of the repository that you want to contribute to. In this demonstration, we'll be working with pyVmomi-community-samples, but this would really work with any GitHub repository. So now we have our user code handle, and he has a copy of the pyVmomi-community-samples repository locally. How does he keep this up to date? So the first step would be to make sure that we SSH clone a local copy of our GitHub repo. Git clone, here we go, we pull it down locally, and that's pyVmomi-community-samples. Now I'm going to show you a little inside trick on the inside of Git. If you say cat.git config, don't edit this file by hand, or at least not unless you're an expert. But you can see here that we have the remote origin and master set for this Git repo. VMware, GitHub, Git.io. At the moment, I happen to have a little bit of a cheat sheet on here for how you would synchronize your repo with the main project. So code handles repo has been sitting there for a while. And if I ask Git which branches I'm on the master branch. I don't have any other branches at the moment. So what I'm going to do here is this line here says get remote add, and I give it the alias VMware. I could call this Bob or Fred if I wanted to. And then I have this SSH URL right here, which is, that's the upstream GitHub repository. And now watch what happens to that hidden configuration file. We have an additional, see here how we have this remote entry here. We have an additional remote entry here. So now, how do we pull from the VMware official repo? Well, we don't actually pull from it. What we do is we do git fetch, and if we say all, this is all remotes that this particular GitHub might be hooked to. So I might potentially have more than one. We want to make sure that our local master is up to date with the remote upstream master that the official VMware website, the official VMware release is running from. So what we'll say is we need to rebase our GitHub repository on the upstream site. So we'll say git rebase VMware master. And now we'll fast forward to VMware master. Now, one of the things to point out here is what was code handle's last, most latest commit request. Let's see here. What was the last thing that he'd seen? He'd seen 15 commits. So, I put something in here, link back to the community website. That was the last thing I'd put. So I'm going to say git push origin. Now, where's that going to go? Remember from our little experiment up here, remote origin is the user code handles remote origin. So that's not going to go back to the VMware origin. So we're going to go git push origin master. And there we go. And you can see here that a bunch of stuff went upstream. And if we hit reload on this history page, you can see here that a bunch of other commits have since gone into code handle's version of the repository. Now, as a matter of practice, whenever you write something for inclusion with our repository and anytime you write something that you want to do a pull request on. So as a matter of practice, whenever you do something that you want to do a pull request on, make sure to use a branch. Whenever you want to add something or change something, to the pyVmomi-community-samples project, or any GitHub project really. It's a good idea in order to make a branch for your work. Now the reason for that is that when you do those steps, git fetch all, and then you say git, so we're on master, so we git rebase or upstream master. There's nothing really to do. It's just really kind of running those commands over and over again. If I had my own changes on my local master, I'd have to sit those changes off to the side, do the rebase, then play my changes over the top again. That way my changes always sat on top of the repository, because the change you're working on, or the changes that you're trying to submit, you always want those to be floating at the top of the changes for the repository. So you don't want those to ever sink down below, say, incoming changes from the master or from the upstream master. So you always want yours floating on top. It's easiest to do that if you keep your own changes in your own branch. So we're going to go through how to do that. So here what I'm going to do is, we're on the master branch in CodeHandle's pyVmomi-samples repository. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say git. Well, actually, we haven't decided what we're working on yet, so let's go deal with that really quickly. So here's the pyVmomi-community-samples site, and let's say we're CodeHandle. We're in here. We're taking a look at these different samples, and we notice here that get all VMs doesn't give you the UUID. The UUID is a durable identifier for a virtual machine that works across data centers and across vCenters. And let's say that's really important to CodeHandle. He thinks this is something that's really important for us to have included in this sample. So he wants to make that change. You don't just do a pull request right away. It's always a good idea to make an issue for this. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, so CodeHandle is going to submit this as an issue, and this is now issue number 66. Now we're going to want to remember that, because we're going to include that URL later in our get comment for when we include our change set for later. So now that we know what we're working on, now we can give our branch a good name. So we'll say branch something like that. Get all VMs UUID. It's relatively mnemonic for us. We can remember what we're working on. So we're going to go to that branch, and just because I've made the branch doesn't mean I'm actually on the branch. All right, so we can do that, and now we're switched to the branch. Now, let's say we decided we don't want to use that branch anymore, or we want to delete it. We can say git branch big D, and you can see that the branch is deleted. But if I were to say checkout -B, I can create and check out a branch simultaneously. Skip a step. Alright, so now that I have my own branch, now I can edit the files. Okay, so let's make our change. Summary.config. Because capitalization is important. And there we go. We've added our one-line change, and we can say git add get all VMs as the file that we're changing, and we'll say git commit. Oh, we haven't set this account up. Let's just do that really quick. Let's try our git commit now. All right, so when you're crafting a commit message to go up to GitHub, you'll want a one-line summary that's about as short as you can get it, 50 characters, I think is optimal. And incidentally, for those who are keeping track at home, UUID is a more durable and correct identifier, not just the name, but also than any MoRef ID or anything else that you might use. All right, and we're going to say that this fixes or closes, and the sample name. And we're going to paste the whole URL right in there. I think instead of fixes, I think we're going to say closes. Actually, what is the term that you're supposed to use? Hold on just a second. Let's take a look at this. GitHub comment, closing an issue via comment. Fixes pound number 45. You can use any of the following keywords. Close, closes, closed, fix, fixed, fixes, resolves, resolves, resolving. Oh, very nice. And so, and then you say, so fixes pound 33. So the full URL like this isn't necessary, actually. We can just say pound 66. Yes. All right. Now if we say git log, I'm going to say 1 line to keep the history short, and I'm going to take a look at 10 lines. So I'm going to take a look at everything Git's been up to in the log, 1 line only for each entry, last 10 entries. And you can see here, there's our work right there on top. So just because you've made a commit doesn't mean that it shows up here in the history of commits. You can see that it hasn't shown up on this master, and there are no other branches. So here's an interesting problem. I just told you, make sure that you put your changes on a branch, and then do your pull requests from your branch. It also makes it easier for you to keep your master in exact synchronicity with the VMware master. So how do you get that branch pushed up? Because if I do git push origin, that pushes the master, and that change didn't make it here. Well, I need to git push the branch that I'm currently on. If I've forgotten, I can say git branch. Oh, there we go. So we'll get git push origin, and remember, our origin is our own private copy of all this stuff. We can go to town there if we want to. We're going to say git push origin our 1 branch, and look what's happened. A new branch has been made on the remote repository, and if we do a reload, master will still be in sync with the upstream master, the VMware upstream master. But I will have a new branch where, ta-da, my get all vms.by.py has actually, it's been updated. Look at that, it's up there, it's on the interwebs right now, ready for a pull. And notice here, GitHub's so smart, compare and pull request. So here is a description of that issue. And if I look, here's my 1-line change, and I can create a pull request, and boom, back over on the master, we have our change set. Notice either way that I've written it, either as pound 66 or with a full URL in there, GitHub renders it like so.